everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, What's the Deal with Databases? A brief intro to databases and Microsoft Access. My name is Jesse O'Neill. I'm going to be your presenter today, and we're going to go through everything databases today. There's going to be quite a few different topics discussed today, so I'll go through that in just a second, but just before I do, just a couple of things to mention. First of all, thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate everybody showing up, and I hope everybody's being safe and staying indoors and doing all the things you should do during these crazy times. So I do appreciate you being here, and we are putting on these webinars to help everybody out, as I know a lot of people are working from home, experiencing a new set of maybe technology or just a new set of everything right now. So we are just putting on these webinars to help people out with adjusting that to that. So I'm really hoping everybody enjoys this. Another thing to mention as well, this is a live webinar, which means that we can, of course, ask any and all questions throughout the presentation today. Now, I will keep everybody on mute just to make sure that I can get through the entire presentation today. And we will just ask the questions through the chat box that you see in your Ring Central Meetings application there. So just reach out to us on chat. If you are having any technical issues, Melanie is here to help everybody out. So just direct your questions to Melanie, and you can use the chat for that as well. If there are any questions about databases in general, both myself and I do have another database expert that's going to be on the call to answer any of the more kind of advanced questions as well. So both myself and John will be on the phone for any questions. We will save the questions for the very end, so after the presentation is done, and then we'll go through and I'll just read through all the questions. As the presentation is going on, please feel free to type out your questions. I might not answer them right away, but I will notice them, and I'll be sure to address them at the very end of the webinar. Okay, with that, let me just give myself a little bit of an introduction here. So, of course, my name is Jesse, as I've mentioned, and I am super happy to be with JN Software and CompuEase. And the reason being is just because I've noticed ever since I started in August last year that everybody is so just focused on the student. And of course, we love to teach, especially me. My job is teaching. I absolutely love to teach, and we love that you guys love learning. So thanks for showing up, and thanks for learning a couple new things today. My personal favorite thing is watching all the light bulbs go off in the classroom. Now, since COVID, we haven't been in a physical classroom, but I can actually still hear it. I can still hear it in your voices when light bulbs are going off. So that always gives me a lot of satisfaction. I'm very happy about that. A little bit of a personal fact about myself: I am a huge coffee nerd. So if you have questions about coffee, I'm happy to answer those as well. And a competitive pool player. All right. So let's go into my company. Well, of course, I work for two different companies, sister companies. They do provide services throughout all of Canada. So JN Software provides training, consulting, database development, and that's going to be Canada-wide, whereas CompuEase provides training for the Ottawa and the National Capital Region, including Quebec. So JN Software Consulting specifically provides training, online public classes with a live instructor, and private online and on-site training. Of course, hopefully we'll be able to get back to the on-site portions of those soon. Either way, they do public and private training, all with live instructors. And of course, they also provide consulting in database development, hence the topic of today's webinar. So if you do happen to want us to help you out with those databases, we are certainly happy to help. And it's nice because we can do kind of like a hybrid between helping you out by developing your database and teaching you how to use it, so you don't have to have somebody do everything for you. You can kind of get somebody to do half or everything. If you want us to do everything, we're happy with that too. CompuWeave specifically provides on-site public training at our downtown Ottawa Training Center. Again, hoping to get back to that soon. And private one-on-one training either on-site or online. All right. Now, of course, what they both offer is fast quality customer service, highly skilled, experienced, and professional trainers like yours truly, a public class schedule with guaranteed to run classes that run often. And I do like to stress guaranteed to run, meaning if you are, the only person that is signed up for the class, we still run that class, so you get that course when you need it. We have a learn or come back free policy on all of our public classes. We have 24/7 after training for any software training. So that means that if you have your questions just after the training session has been completed, of course, we are still good. We are going to help you out with those questions. We do have a third-party provider that will help you out with any of your after training needs. And of course, a lot of people associate us with software training, but we also do professional skills training. So things like government briefing notes, so different professional skills training, things like that. All right, so the last one we've got here is this is a fairly new offer that we're offering, and we do provide a free audit, I should say, which comes with a 20-minute consult. So it doesn't take a lot of time out of your day. And then what you get is this nice report. It's an audit report, and you can use that. It will suggest any training needs that you may have in your organization. It might suggest any database development needs that you may have in your organization. And of course, we're going to point to some of our either free or paid resources that we give you in the report, and you get to take that home. It doesn't take a lot of time, and it is completely free. So I will post that link in the chat box, but also the link will come to you. We do have the follow-up email as well, so the link will be in that follow-up email if you are interested. All right, so now the webinar outline. So what's covered in today's webinar? We are going to cover 3 different topics. The first one being understanding databases and when to use them. So this webinar is assuming that you don't have a lot of experience with databases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the alternatives between using an Excel table, kind of like a database, and when you want to stop using that Excel table and start using something a bit more robust, like a relational database, which brings up the next point, the next topic, which is defining relationships. So what is a relational database? Why is it more efficient? How can it help you with your data and making your data a bit more efficient? So then we're going to go through that. I will show you, I'll use Access because Access is a fairly user-friendly interface. But of course, databases are not just Access, Microsoft Access. They are, SQL databases. We have web backends. There's a whole gamut of things that we can use for databases, and of course, input interfaces, and of course, reporting interfaces, things like that. So there's a lot of different components to databases. Access just happens to be a very user-friendly one, so I like to use that as my example. And then finally, final topic we'll talk about today is going to be basic queries. So once we understand why we're going to use a database, I'm going to show you kind of how to bring together all of your data so you get to actually see the output. And all of your hard work that went into designing and putting together your database, that's going to start to pay off when you start using your queries. There are a couple of other things that we'll talk about, like kind of throughout as well. So, having a database somewhere to store your information is great, but then the other nice things are a very user-friendly interface on inputting the information, and of course, a very user-friendly interface on getting the output of that database as well. So I will show some demos throughout, and I'll just show you kind of a little bit about Access and how that works. For those people that aren't familiar with databases, they don't need to be. They can still use the database without understanding everything about it. All right. So We do have some contact information on this slide. I won't keep the slide here very long because the slide, of course, we do have contact information everywhere. I'm going to show you where to find contact information later on as well. So definitely it'll be easy to find our contact info. And if you do need to contact us in any way, let us know. You can let me know in the chat right now if you want me to contact, or you want us to contact you. We'll definitely reach out and that sort of thing. So yeah, you can contact us for any of your database development needs. You can contact us for any of your training needs, anything like that. All right. So with that, I am going to go straight into the first topic today, which is why we're using databases. And to illustrate the point, I'm going to start by going into a table in Excel that we have here. All right. So this table in Excel is an employee list. And the employee list, of course, is giving a bunch of information. For today's training, we're going to call all of the headers fields, right? Because they represent an input where you can put information. So each one of the rows that we see here, these are all going to be considered records because they contain information that is all related to everything in that row. For example, Troy Wells has an employee ID. This is Troy Wells' email address. This is the department Troy belongs to, and so on, right? You're starting to get the idea. So that's all considered to be a record. What Excel tables are really good at are, first and foremost, they're really, really user-friendly. That means that pretty well everybody in your organization should be able to at least pick it up pretty quickly. If they don't already understand how to use tables, they can pick it up very quickly. Tables are super, super easy for slicing and dicing your information. So you can see here, you've got your filters, and if I want to, sort based on the salary, let's just say largest to smallest, you can see all of your top earning employees right there very quickly. Likewise, if I just wanted to see people that were in my marketing department, I could go to department, uncheck everything, and just choose the marketing team there to show just the marketing employees there. You can also add in really quick things like if I wanted to put in my average marketing your average marketing salary, then you can see it's 59,000 and some change there. So very, very easy to use. Doesn't take a lot of time to understand how to get up to speed with this. Now, some of the downfalls of using our Excel tables. So let me just get rid of my my filter here. Get rid of that filter. Some of the downfalls of using tables is you'll notice that if I go to the very bottom of my sheet, the very last cell is the 1,048,576. So you do have a limit on the amount of information you can put into an Excel table. Now that limit seems quite large, but I'll tell you just after having used tables and having used input methods quite often, that actually kind of that limit comes up pretty quickly actually, if you've got any sort of robust information. And the main problem with using your your tables in Excel is that you'll notice that there's a lot of duplication. Every single row has, unique information about it. So you can see department says sales a bunch of different times in here. And, for something like an employee table, that's not that big of a deal, right? The amount of duplication in it is fairly minimal in here. But what I want to do next is show you an example of where your duplication might get quite large. So if you do have a lot of duplication in a given table, it might be time to start considering to go to a relational database. So what I'll do is I'll bring you over to my PowerPoint that I've created that will kind of display a point. So this is an example of something that might resemble an Excel table that we have. And as you can see, you have a bunch of different products on the right-hand side. All of these products were ordered by customers. Now, the order information, which is in the middle here, all of that information is duplicated. Why is it duplicated? Well, because the same order had two different products. Of course, there's only one duplication. That's just to kind of display the point today. But if you can imagine, an order can have 50, 60 products on it, no problem. So all of this information, Polly Douglas, the date the order happened, the shipped date, all of that information might be duplicated very, very quickly if there's 50 or 60 items or products in a given order. So Polly, the customer information, Polly Douglas, his billing address, and the rest of his address, including his contact information, is all duplicated there. The same thing here with Millicent Jones. These are odd names we came up with, but I digress. What we have here is some more duplication here. So in situations like this where you have information that can be kind of grouped into, we're going to call them tables right now, because that's how they're called in databases. They can be kind of grouped and organized, sliced and diced into tables. If you're starting to see a lot of duplication in your information, it's likely that you're going to have to start looking at relational databases. Now, this next part is how relational databases work. All right, so the first part that happens when you start using a relational database, you'll be thinking about the information and you'll be thinking about the grouping that you may have. So each one of these things here, as you can see, that one large table, we just split it into three and we grouped all of the relevant information together. That's usually the first step when you're thinking about designing a database. You're going to want to think about what information belongs together. All right. And if you do start to see unnecessary grouping in any given table, you probably want to split that table so that you're grouping it into two smaller groups. All right. So that's step number one. Now, because this table is now split into three, we no longer need that duplication in there, right? Because all of this information here, the second piece for Polly Douglas and the second piece for Millicent Jones, that's now redundant, right? So that doesn't really matter anymore. Same thing with the order information. You can see there's some duplication there as well. That doesn't matter anymore because it's all on separate tables. So you get rid of them. You can see already the information is now not necessary at all, like the redundant information is now not necessary at all. And just to display the point, there's so much less information in any given table, as you're seeing here. Now, there is one problem with this because we split it in one large table into three smaller tables, and then we got rid of the duplicate information. The problem is which order that you see on this table belongs to which products, or I should have said vice versa, which products belong to which order. It's not entirely clear, and as we know, you can sort and filter each table individually, so the information might not just be beside one another anymore, right? So it's now unclear which products belong to which order, and which order belongs to which customer, right? So for that reason, we're going to start introducing what's called a primary and a foreign key. What these are just unique identifiers for the order, unique identifiers for the customer, and unique identifiers for that product details. Every single table will have a unique identifier on it. Now, you'll notice something about these primary and foreign keys. You can see here that you have the customer ID in the customers table here, and you have the customer ID in the order table as well. So what's happening here is you have your primary key. So the primary key refers to the key on its table. So this is the customer table, so the customer ID would be the primary key. This one here is the orders table, so the customer ID is foreign on the order table, hence the name foreign key. All right, and What you do when you're creating these tables and you're designing your database is you add links in. So you see, you say, anywhere where you see the exact same order customer ID on the customer table as the one on the order table, those two, I guess, records are linked in some way. And very similarly, you can see here that anywhere on the order table where you have the order ID, that's your primary key, where you have the same order ID as on the products table, those products are linked to that one order. Okay, so in this particular example, you can see the customer ID has a one-to-one relationship. So every customer has just one order, but that's not necessary. One customer can have several orders if you wanted. And that's just the nature of the data that we have on our example right now. But you might have more than one order. And the order, as you can see, there are multiple products for any given order. So what do? We just said here, this order number 1 relates to the product, the silhouette, and the product fire truck. Oh, product name, yeah. So this person, Douglas, sorry, Polly Douglas, I should say, had order 1 here, and order 1 had product 1 and product 2 on it. You can see the order ID, the foreign key, and the product details. So you've now got these links between the tables, and you've got those primary and foreign keys. Alrighty, so that is the nature behind a relational database. Instead of having all of that redundant information where you have duplicate pieces in each table, you get rid of all those duplicates and you replace them with an ID instead. And then once you've replaced them with that ID, you link the primary key ID to the foreign key ID on the next table over. All right, and what that starts looking like as you go in a little bit deeper and you start doing a bit more information. Let me just take a look. I'll show it to you, the relationships here. As you can see, it can start to get fairly complicated here. There's a lot of different links. And if you'll notice in here, I have the orders. You can see there's the order ID. It's marked with it might be a little small, but that's actually a key icon. So that is your primary key on the orders table, and you've linked that primary key to the order details in this case. And the order details, that has the primary key order details on it. That's not being linked anywhere, but you can see there's the foreign key product ID. So the product ID from the products table is being linked to the order details table. All of this stuff, by the way, this is all in our Access Level 1. So we do teach you all about primary and foreign keys. We teach you about understanding when you should start splitting your data into separate tables and how you can create those links. You'll also notice on here that you have the link type. So you can see there's a 1 over here and an infinity sign over here. What that represents is that one order can have multiple order details. In this case, products here, one product can have multiple order details associated with it. So again, those types of links, you can see there's going to be multiple types of links with different link details on them, and creating those is going to take some very specific planning. Again, all stuff that we teach you in the Access Level 1 course. Okay, now that we've seen the links, the tables, and understanding how relationships start becoming formed and why they're becoming formed, let's just show you a table that we have here. So let me show you your orders table. As you can see in the orders table, you have different attributes in the orders table. An attribute is kind of like a field. So you can see one of the attributes is order ID, customer ID, employee ID. Very likely those are creating links to other tables. You then have your order date, the sales tax, you have the freight charges that you have in there, your ship date, the shipper ID, and so on, right? So you're starting to see all of the different attributes you have. And then, of course, the records that you have as well. There's a whole bunch of records on this order table, and each record represents a different order, okay? Now, we also in this have multiple tables. And every once in a while, what's going to happen is you're going to want to bring all of those tables into one big amalgamated table, right? Because you might want to put in customer information into your I guess, report. And you might want to put in order information for those customers into your report. And you might want to put in maybe the employee that sold those products into the report as well, and a whole bunch of stuff. So let me just show you that over here. You can take a look over here. This is a query that we have. It's called the order details query. And you can see here that it brings in the product description, brings in the product name. It also brings in the customer information over here. So it's kind of fitting information from multiple tables all into one. Another thing that might be important to you is maybe you don't want every product. Maybe you just want the products that belong in, let's say, the outdoors category. And maybe you just want the products that belong in the footwear category. Maybe you just want the products that were sold within the last year, things like that. So all of these functions, they can all happen when you start to understand what's called queries. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint document over here. I'm going to go to my final slide, which is going to explain queries. So this is what's called SQL syntax. All right. So what you're doing with SQL syntax is you're asking your database a question. Now, this can be done in Access, but it can also be done in other types of SQL databases. A lot of different databases are considered SQL databases. All right. So you do get those options, and the syntax is going to be fairly similar across all database types. Well, SQL database types, I should say. All right. So the first one that I should teach you is the select. It's probably the most important piece. It's just saying which attributes do you want to see. So you can see it specifies the fields containing the target data. So an example of that would be select all of my order IDs and all of my product names. Now they also have the table associated with that. So you can see it's the order ID is from the orders table and the product name is from the products table. So you're telling the database what you want to put in your report, or I guess your query. The next one here is from, which is going to say, okay, where am I going to find that information, right? So we have in here orders, so that just refers to the orders table, and products, which refers to the products table. The next one to explain here is that where clause that we have in there. And the where clause is saying, okay, but I don't want everything. I don't want all of the information from my entire database. I just want pieces of that information. If you kind of put a link between Excel and SQL databases, your where clause is similar to your filters in Excel. All right. So in this case, we're saying where the category equals outerwear, or the category equals footwear in this case. And as you can see, there's a couple of different ways that you can group together your where clauses. You have your and, which means both, or you have your or, which means one or the other. So in this case, where it says outerwear or footwear, it's saying the category for those products can be outerwear or the category can be footwear. If it's either one of those, then put it into our report. All right. The and, on the other hand, means that they both have to apply. So if there was a product that had two categories, one of the categories was outerwear and the other category was footwear, that would be the only case, only scenario where that product would end up in our report. Okay, so your and actually just limits things a little bit further. And the very last one, again, just creating an equivalent to Excel. Order by is kind of like sorting in Excel. So it's just saying how you want to sort your data in that report. All right. So we have in this example order by the order date, and we're going to order in descending order. All right, so that's your example there. Now, let me just very quickly show you how to create this query, because of course, this query language is fairly complex. I mean, it's great, it's good information, and if you understand how to use it, then it's very powerful. But some people are fairly hesitant to start using this. So what Access has done is they've given the power back to the user. All right, so what they've done to help people with that is they've included a wizard. So if I go to create and I say query wizard, what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to create a new query, which is asking Access to return certain information, but it's going to allow me to do it using a very simple kind of query builder. So I'm just going to use the simple query wizard. We do go through different types in our Access level 1 and level 2. There's a lot of different types of queries that you can build. So just if you are interested in all of that, then check out our outlines because it will have quite a bit of information about it. Now, in this query, I'm going to want to put in some information from the order details, some information from the customers, some information from the products, and some information from the orders tables. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find my information by choosing the table first, so in this case, order details, and then taking a look for the available attributes or available fields. So I'm going to throw in the order details from the quantity from the order details table, I should say. I'm also going to want to see the orders, the order ID from the orders table. So I'm going to throw in the order ID. I also want to see maybe the product name, and that one's on the products table. So I'm going to throw in the product name. I might also want to see the customer's first and last name. So I'm going to go to my customers table and choose the first and the last name. I'm going to use the order date. You'll see later on that I'm not going to display the order date. Don't necessarily want to see it on the table, but I'm going to use the order date to be able to sort the information. So I'm going to go looking on the orders table for the order date. I'm going to throw it in there. And again, same thing with the category. I don't necessarily want to see the category for the products, but I do want to use it for my filter. So I'm going to go to my products table and choose the category in here. Now I'm finished with choosing all of my fields. I'm going to go, next, next, and finish. And as you can see, you've built your query. That's your first step, of course, because we don't have any of our filters in, and we don't have any of our sorting in either. So what we have to do is we do have to design this thing. Let's go a little bit further, and we're going to change the view. You'll notice you have 3 different views. One's the datasheet view, SQL view, and design view. SQL view, you'll see, is a little bit intimidating. This is kind of looking like my example from before. And as you can see, Access actually did it all in the back end. So you don't necessarily need to know how to use the SQL queries. You can just use the query builder, the user-friendly one. You also have the data sheet view, which is just the output. And finally, the design view, which will help you go a little bit further in building your query. So we use the query wizard, but it didn't have everything we wanted. So we're going to use the design view to go a little bit further. Really, the only 2 additional things that I want to specify or stipulate in my query is I just want to sort based on the order date. So you can see here there's a sort. And in the sort, we can just tell it that we want to sort by descending on the order date. Now, I said I didn't want to show the order date, so I'm just going to uncheck this. Where it says show, I'm just going to uncheck that. I also don't want to show the category. I'm not really interested in it. I just want to know that it's outerwear or footwear. So you can see down here, there's a criteria. I'm going to type in. You will have to remember to put on quotes, of course, when you're doing this. Anything that is text, you have to put quotes around. So I'm going to put in outerwear, and you can see there's an or section here, footwear. Hey, voila, we've created a nice little query. Now let's run the query. So I'll just hit the run button up here. And as you can see, you've got all of your orders that are outerwear or footwear, and they're all going to be organized in chronological order, so based on the order date that we have in here. Now, if you are curious, I do also want to show you here your SQL view. So I'm just going to go to my SQL view here, and you can see the SQL that was built by Access. So it says select quantity, order ID, product name, first name, last name from. Inner join, by the way, is just how the two tables are linked. So just don't pay attention to that quite yet. That is something that we do teach in our Access Level 1. But you're saying from the orders table and from the products table and from, I believe we had a customer ID in here as well from the customers table. Then the next one here is your where statement. So you've got your outerwear filter, and you've got your footwear filter in here. And finally, order by, and you're seeing it's ordering by the order date in descending order. So that's all of the things that it's thinking about when it brings up this new table based on your query. Now, all of this is fairly, involved. It seemed fairly simple, and it really is, but for those people that are not familiar with Access or not familiar with databases, this is a lot to take in. So what you can do specific to Access, and I know other applications have their own versions of this as well, but specific to Access, for those people that are not familiar with the interface, you can just give them access to a form. So for example, if you wanted to put a new employee into your database, rather than telling them to go to the tables here and put one in manually, that would be something that would seem a little daunting to people that are not familiar with databases. You can just give them access to this employees form. And as you can see, it's a lot more user-friendly. And all I have to do is hit the new button down here. Employee ID will automatically go in for me. I can put in my own name, my email address. I guess I should put my actual email address in here. So used to testing these things. My department, if I would like. My status. My salary. My hire date. And you can see there's even date pickers in here. My retirement date, which I would go very much forward. And my job rating here as well. And once you add that into your database, as you can see, it's actually validating some of the stuff. I'll just put in employee ID 1. Let's just see. Yep, it accepted it. Perfect. You can validate the stuff in your forms, which means that you do get that correct information. But once you add that to your employees database or your employees table, you'll notice that when I refresh this employees table here, that I put in my information in the table. Again, you can just give people just access to certain forms rather than giving them access to the entire database, making it far less daunting for those people that are not familiar with tables. Other types of databases have other forms of this, right? So it's not just Access where you can create your own forms, but this one is a nice one for sure. And the same thing with the output. So now that you've got all of that very nice information, some people are fairly comfortable creating queries, but their queries, first of all, are not formatted very well. And second of all, queries might be a little bit daunting for people that are not familiar with them. So you can see here, I've actually got like a customers report pre-built in here, and you can give people access to these types of reports where they can just run the reports. It does everything for them, so they can just analyze the data. So if you have people that are fairly familiar with databases, they can create the reports, and then you have the analysts just go in and take a look and analyze the data. Also, there's some special features you can do with reports. Like here, you can see there's an email report. I promise you, there's a lot of special features. You can even do charts. You can export this data to Excel automatically, even things like that. All right, so there's a lot of different add-ons, a lot of different things you can do with Access databases, even for those people that are not comfortable with using Access at all or databases. All right, so with all of that, just to recap a little bit, what we talked about today is we talked about our tables, what they're good for, and that was like filtering, sorting. As long as you don't have a lot of duplication in your data or you don't have a lot of data, very typically using tables is more user-friendly and maybe a little bit easier to do. But when you do have some duplication in your data, and you start to get a lot of duplication in your data, that's when you want to start creating these relational databases that you have here. Once you do have those relational databases, there's a specific query language that you can use. These are some basic pieces of the query that you can use. There's a lot more, promise you that. And then we also went over Access, kind of its advantages that you have here with the tables, queries, and of course, for those people that are not familiar with Access, the forms and the reports. Even those people that are familiar with Access but just want things to be formatted quite nicely, that is something that's nice as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to let all of those questions roll in. So please, guys, there's only a couple of questions that have been posed so far. So please, guys, just make sure to type in all of your questions into the chat box. I will get to them one by one, but just while I'm waiting for those to roll in, I just wanted to show a couple of our services that we've got here. So first of all, CompUI's website. We do have two sister companies, CompUI's and JN Software. So the CompUI's website that we've got here, you can see up at the very top right, that's all of our contact information. All of our free resources are up there as well. So you can see here we've got a blog, we have some webinars, which you know because you're on the webinar right now. And we have also in here a YouTube channel, which has a bunch of tips in it. If you do click on our course list, you'll notice that we do have course lists in here for our different training, and one of them in here is Access training, so you can check that out if you're curious. If you want to learn all about Access, you can just click on that and go through. It'll show you, of course, the description and the prices and all of that, but if you do want to take a look, we also have other views like calendar views to see when the next public training is. Of course, if you're not seeing an Access training on there, then let us know and we can definitely work something out for you. All right. Also, for our free resources, we have developed a section in here, both on the CompUI's website, on the JN Software website, for all of our working from home free resources. Now on the JN page, very similar kind of layout. You've got your resources, you've got all of the free resources, the webinars, that sort of thing up there. If you are interested in databases, you can just click on databases. If you're interested in our courses, you can click on our courses, and I'll just take you through here. You can see here we have Access, so just click on Access. It will give you a description of all of our outlines here. So just a quick description, and then if you click on the full outline, you'll see there is going to be a full description, and you can register just on the right-hand side here for any of our public classes. Again, if those dates don't work for you, contact us. We can help you with that. Now, if you do want us to help you out with any of this, if you want us to start building your databases, start helping you plan any part of the process that you want us to help you out with, we do offer database development as well. So before you do though, well, if you want to make sure that you have a couple of things in mind in terms of planning your database ahead of time, we do have some blog articles for that. So you can see here, if you go to our blog and you click on databases, you'll see there's a bunch of different blog articles to help you starting your database project, when you're hiring a database consultant, what to think about, and clearing up the confusion around which type of database you want to use. So make sure to check those out. My two favorite here are your cleaning up the confusion, choosing your databases, because as you can see here, there's other types of databases, not just Access. So Excel is extremely good for very simple data. Microsoft Access is for, again, fairly simple, but a little bit more robust. SQL servers are super good for very highly scalable data. So when you have a lot of data in there, and then web applications are for things like when you want them to be very easily accessible. So people can even access data from their phones and things like that. Now, that being said, you can have combinations of these as well. Like you can have a web backend and Access front end and that sort of thing. So there's mix and match, and we can help you with all of that. So if you are, of course, check out our How to Start Your Database project. These are some key questions to ask before you even get started with creating a database. So we do have that blog article in there as well. Now, if you are interested in getting us to help you with developing your database, any step along the way, doesn't matter what step it is, whether you just need some help making things better than they are right now, or whether you need us to help you from scratch. If you want some training to go along with your database development, we have some excellent trainers for that as well. So we can help you in any which way. So consult with us and we'll help you with that. So if you click on consulting here, you'll see some advantages, some of our process, some of our projects that we've done before. And of course, once you're convinced by all of this information in here, at the very bottom, there's a contact us link. And it just asks you for some very basic information and we'll get a hold of you real soon. All right. To go over some of our free resources, as I mentioned, there is that YouTube channel. If you click on the YouTube link, it has a bunch of our tips. So you can see Excel tips, Word tips, Outlook tips, and that sort of thing. If you're interested in learning more about any of those programs, they're completely free, so just check it out on the YouTube channel. We, of course, have other webinars coming up. So the next webinar we have, today was the databases one. We have the SharePoint. We have turning data into decisions. This one's excellent. I really like this one because Excel dashboards is a little known feature of Excel that's super, super useful. Reducing our barriers. So this is making your documents accessible for those people that can't see them normally. And then finally, the very last one on the docket here, and of course we're always coming up with new ones, but the very last one that is currently on the docket is organizing our training. So just helping you out with actually putting together training services. All right. If you have missed a webinar and you are interested in seeing them, we do put all of our recordings up, even this one's being recorded. So you can see here there's a link for previous webinars. You can take a look at all of our previous webinars, and there's a YouTube link on all of them so that you can actually just hear what we had to say. Finally, last thing I'll mention here is we do have that audit. So I'll provide the link. It will also come in your follow-up email as well. So if you do have a question about any of this stuff, feel free to give us a ring or send us an email. So you can see our contact information is here. We also have, just some chat. You can contact us in any way. It's very, very easy, definitely, to contact us. Okay, now I think finally it is time for the questions. So let me go through. First question from Louisa. We have, will Access allow you to average records? For example, 3x3, average of entries? Yes, for sure. There is very basic functions in Access for doing things like that, reporting functions. If ever that your functions in here, which I can tell you for sure, Louisa, that is in there. But if ever there is an issue with finding and manipulating data the way that you would expect them using the reporting feature, there's also a very easy Excel link. And I will mention as well that you can actually create a permanent link between your Access database and Excel. So it's constantly pushing to Excel, and then that way you can create nice pivot tables and reports in Excel if that's more your style. So even if you don't have everything, all of the functions that you're looking for in Access, then it has a very natural link that is constant, stays there all the time between Access and Excel. All right. From Chris, how well integrated is MS Access and MS Teams? All right. That's a really good question. Actually, I might defer to John on that one. John, do you happen to know the link between Access and Teams? I know for most of the other applications, it's almost a complete integration, but I have not yet tried Access with Teams.
Yeah, I would say since you're the Teams expert, if you haven't found it, I don't think it exists yet. But
Okay,
I'm more than happy to do some more research on that. We haven't actually gotten a lot of questions along those lines.
fair
Um,
enough.
and I think it really depends on what you want to do with it, right?
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so Chris, we will definitely reach out to you as well afterwards. Yeah, Melanie, do you mind taking that one down? And Chris, we do have your contact info if you've signed up or registered, so we can send that out to you with the follow-up as well. All right, next question. Kendall, we have, how can I look up one customer or record in the database? Kendall, good question about that one. So you saw these reports here that we have. So the reports, and it might take a little bit of time to do, so unfortunately I won't be able to display it in the next 2 minutes, but I will tell you these reports, you are able to create these reports so that they have customizable inputs. Basically, when you run the report, it just asks you a series or even just one question, whatever you set it up to do. And then, for example, in your case, you would say, run a report that asks me for a customer, either by customer ID, customer name, whatever it happens to be, however you would look up that information. And then the report, of course, would return that customer info just based on the input. All it is when you double click on the report to run it, there's a little pop-up that just says, okay, what is the customer name you're looking for? And then the report will show the results based on that input.
And if I can add something in there, Jesse,
Yep.
this there's always 3 ways to do everything in programs like Access and Excel and things like that. So you're absolutely correct. That is a fantastic way to set it up. It's called using a parameter, and it makes it very easy to run it over and over again. In theory, you could also do the same thing by just creating a query and adding it into the where clause of the query to put that in. But also, if you open up the customers table, I believe you should be able to use the filters at the top of the screen to accomplish the same kind of thing. So where it says first name, last name, you can filter there as well. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. Are you just trying to do a quick lookup one time that you're never going to have to do again? Are you creating a query you're going to be using over and over again? Are you creating a screen that other people other than you are going to need to use to be able to do this? And so depending on which circumstance, you can decide which method to invest your time into getting that answer.
Thank you, John. I think you're going to have to answer this next one from Louisa as well. Can a table in Access contain fields with links to Word or PDF or other files? I believe so, but I want to check with you.
So, I mean, depends on your definition of a link, right? Like I would do it. I've done databases before where they want to be able to track documents associated with this record. So whether it's a customer or an employee or something like that. And so you can just insert the file path to that document and then identify on the form, you would identify that as a hyperlink. So it would show up as the blue underlined hyperlink, and then the user can just click on that and it would open up the file path, just like it would open up a URL. And as long as that user has that same file path and has permission to access that drive and that file, it should just pop up for them.
Now, what about storing things on SharePoint? Is it easier to store things on SharePoint and link from Access to SharePoint? Is that a thing as well?
I would think you'd use the same kind of linking procedure where it's like name of SharePoint site dot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like we've seen, for example, internally going back and forth when we send messages in Teams, people will often send like a link to a file on our SharePoint internal SharePoint drives, right? So I would think you would want to store the same thing in that field. But again, there's always multiple ways to do anything. So I'm sure there's other ways that can be investigated depending on what the exact requirements are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, John. All right. From Chris, can I put my database online in OneDrive and query it from a website or a computer? Yes, certainly you can. John, I'm going to need you on this one again.
Yeah. So just because a thing can be done does not mean that thing should be done or is necessarily a good idea. The Access, if you're storing the data in Access, right? It's designed to be used either on a computer or on a local network. That's how Microsoft kind of designed it. It will work over the internet. However, it will not work well. It will be slow, and it'll corrupt its data very easily because it's not designed for that long distance time delay, data flowing back and forth across the internet kind of interface. It was designed to be used on a local network because Access is a file database where it stores all of the data in this kind of like one file, whereas SQL Server and solutions like that are record based. So instead of sending when you want to get information out of an Access database that's stored on OneDrive or online somewhere, it has to go and retrieve a whole chunk of that file, or possibly even download that whole file to be able to get anything out of it. Whereas when you query SQL Server, it says, oh, you only want these 3 records? I'm just going to send you these 3 records. So doing it over the internet makes it really hard to use because it's really slow. If the data connection gets lost, it can corrupt the data. And if there are multiple people involved, you end up with problems with it, like not knowing who is locked which portion of the data properly and so forth. So if you're looking at any type of solution where you need to be able to access it online, I would strongly recommend some type of SQL Server or web database solution. For SQL Server, it's very easy to set up Azure on the Microsoft Azure platform, which is their online cloud. You can set up a SQL Server instance on there, or we can help you, obviously. Set up a SQL Server instance on there and create your database there and connect to that database from Access or even Excel or any other type of system. Similarly, if a web database is the best solution, then there are lots of options to create the back end on the web and the front end on the web. And like Jesse was saying, you can always query that from other places as well.
Perfect. All right, guys, keep the questions coming. If you have any additional questions, I'm just going to put up our contact information here. And just a couple of things to mention, just while more questions are pulling in. I just wanted to mention that in any of our private sessions that we give, for training sessions, I should say, any of the private sessions that we give, we also have an opportunity to provide your own files or data so that we can actually help you out with your files in the training sessions. That way you're looking at your own files when you're starting to learn things as well. All right, so yeah, so you can definitely schedule a private training with us and we should be able to help you out with your data, of course, if you provide it ahead of time. Also, just to mention this again, all of our sessions are guaranteed to run, which means that they will always run, rain or shine, whether there's more people in the class or less. We always do run these the training sessions. All right. Okay, guys, it is just perfect. Thanks, Chris. It is just about 1 o'clock, so I am going to say goodbye unless there's any last-minute questions in there. But I hope to see everybody at the next webinar that we have. And just to remind you, the next webinar coming up is SharePoint, bringing your organization into the digital world. It's going to be presented by Tina and Carol, and of course they have a lot to say on that. So thanks so much, guys. Thanks for being here, and be sure to register for that next one. All right. See you soon. You too, guys.